Good morning and welcome to Nigeria Now, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network. My name is Merciful Ajinamanu. I'll be reading out some stories this morning from the front pages of the newspapers, of course. We begin from the Blueprint newspaper. The banner headline there is Electoral Act Amendment Bill. CSOs slam Senate consensus option. Bill remains in limbo. That can be found on page 6 of the Blueprint. And then the rider underneath the story, we have 4 of them. The first, upper chamber settles for direct, indirect consensus arrangement. Chambers to harmonize positions. And then reps opt for direct, indirect primaries. Consensus on democratic invitation to litigations. That's coming from the civil societies. Of course, that can be found on page 6. And then underneath the Blueprint tag there, we see we are deploying drones, other technologies to tackle insecurity. That's the IGP saying that right there. Senate urges military to block fleeing terrorist escape routes. And Bello Turji, gangs not relocating to Kwara Forest. Police are saying that. We can get our story on page 5 and 6. And then on page 22, federal government moves to ban eating of donkey meat. That can be found on page 22 of the Blueprint newspaper. Beside the tag there, we see CBN lend banks 9.17 trillion naira in 7 months. Through SFL window. That can be found on page 22. And then underneath our story, when experts brainstormed at First Bank's Economic Outlook 2022 webinar, that can be found on page 20. Talking about AFCON, Super Eagles spank Guinea-Bissau, zoom into round of 16. That can be found on page 31 of the Blueprint newspaper. And Osimbajo says we'll defeat evil forces contesting soul of Nigeria. We can get that on page 7. On page 8, NAPTIP DSS operatives rescue trafficked Burundians from Imo village. NAPTIP DSS operatives rescue trafficked Burundians from Imo village. And we can get that on page 8. 108,000 birds at risk as bird flu hits Kaduna. That story can be found on page 15. And FEC approves 75.78 billion naira for FCT erosion control transportation project. We can get that on page 7. And then on page 22, Lagos acquires new trains for intra-city metro rail line. And then we move over from the Blueprint to the Daily Trust newspaper. The banner headline there is talking about APC convention, APC to pick chair from 4 contenders. We have a couple of riders there. Aspirants lobby Buhari's men as convention timetable released. Yari Sharif Yuguda edged out. President has final say. And crisis persists in Zamfara, Sokoto, Abia, Benue chapters. That can be found on page 5 and 15 of the Daily Trust newspaper. From the very top there, we see vehicle registration portal fails as importers decry delays at ports. And then electoral bill, fresh controversy as Senate reps approve different versions. That can be found on page 14. Abisalami Sultan, others to grace Daily Trust dialogue today. That can be found on page 4. Of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then on the picture of the day there, we see Super Eagle players and of course Guinea-Bissau players yesterday at the confrontation. Super Eagles and AFCON group phase in style beat Guinea-Bissau 2-0. That can be found on page 47 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Displaced girl raped by aid worker commits suicide. That can be found on page 13. Fuel price, NEC recommends 302 naira per litre. That can be found on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Buhari arrives Kaduna, inaugurates project today. That can be found on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And on the Nigerian News Direct, the banner headline there is Senate reamends electoral bill, approves direct, indirect or consensus for party primaries. That can be found on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct paper. And Lagos State government acquires 2 new high-speed trains for Red Line Rail project. We can get that on page 2. And APPO says Dangote refinery to reduce Africa's petroleum importation by 36%. Check that again. Dangote refinery to reduce Africa's petroleum importation by 36%. That can be found on page 2. NCDMB Navy to collaborate on vessel compliance security. That is on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct paper. And then underneath the picture of the day, the 38-year-old businessman bags life imprisonment for raping, impregnating in-law. That can be found on page 22. Petrol subsidy removal, group tells Senate President to be firm. We can get out on page 23 of the Nigerian News Direct. We move over to the Business Day newspaper. The banner headline there is talking about oil edition for a few barrels more naira to face pressure on low oil output, rising interest rates. And then besides that, Nnamdi Kanu, federal government's poor compliance record raises doubt. We can get that on page 30. Hospitals to drop HMOs over debt, poor tariffs, and that can be found on page 2, of course. Minimizing socio-economic losses in 2022. We can get that on page 2 as well. We'll move over to the last paper for this morning, which is the Nation newspaper. From the very top, we see EFCC quizzes AMCON MD over sold asset. Then the writer there is talking about Kuru defends integrity. That can be found on page 5. And Kanu's trial continues February 16. 1 billion naira damages for IPOB chief. That can be found on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. And on the same page, Tinubu clarifies position on PVC. He says cards don't expire. And that can be found on page 5 as well on the Nation newspaper. Then we see an article on the front page right there. Lagos acquires 2 speed trains from US for city service. It continues on page 4. Then reworked electoral bill, Senate House defer on consensus option. That can be continued on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Then INEC warns parties against conducting primaries outside Ekiti, Osun. That can be found on page 3. Governors tighten grip on APC ahead convention. We have 3 riders under in the story. The first, state helmsman to shortlist 2 aspirants for chair. And then the second, zoning battle rages convention guideline out. We see zoning battle rages. Then the third one, convention guidelines out. That can be continued on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And we see a detail of the guidelines right there. The first, reconciliation panel report ready January 31st. The second, sale of forms begin February 14. Screening of aspirants February 28 to 22. And then screening appeal committee sit February 23rd. And then we see reps probe AGF IG over Magodo Lagos incident. I take that again, talking about reps probe AGF IG over Magodo Lagos incident. And then we see Eagle take all 9 points, of course, talking about the AFCON. That can be found on page 31 of the Nation newspaper. You can also stay updated on our website, www.tostvnetwork.com, and our social media platforms at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Stay engaged, stay updated, and follow us so you don't miss out on amazing content, of course, from Nigeria and across Africa. Again, my name is Merciful Ajinomo. Thank you again for joining us on Nigeria Now today. See you tomorrow and stay safe.